Much for joining us, Kayla.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jarrod. I'm so excited to be here. Jarrod and I met a few weeks back when we were allowed to meet in person and had a really exciting conversation, about the Ottawa entrepreneurship ecosystem, but just seeing, all of these events come to life digitally is really incredible. So thank you, Jarrod, for organizing this.
And providing a little bit of knowledge about what Startup Canada is for those of us who don't know. And are there still people in Canada who don't know what you guys do? I wouldn't have thought.
There are entrepreneurs born every single day. Small businesses sprout up all the time. So,
and being a resource as the go-to for anything startup is a great resource. So thank you very much. Oh, Sue, you provided information for the startup chats. It's a great opportunity as well.
Hi, everyone. So as Jarrod mentioned, my name is Kayla Isabelle, and I'm the new executive director at Startup Canada. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Startup Canada, we are Canada's entrepreneurship organization. So representing 3.5 million entrepreneurs across Canada, coast to coast to coast, really serving, providing events for entrepreneurs, marketing, communication support, digital programming, especially over the last couple of weeks, and as we navigate this new digital world that we're all living in, and then advocacy. So really over the last couple of weeks, we've been working with our team, connecting with our Startup Canada communities across Canada. So regional and local groups that represent the entrepreneur ecosystems on the ground, connecting with them and really identifying the challenges that entrepreneurs are facing amidst COVID-19, very much on the funding side, but also, just looking at the power of community and that we all really need to be leaning on each other during this challenging time, and these sorts of spaces coming together and get ideas from other entrepreneurs and other, industries, I think is also always a really helpful conversation to bring yourself out of sort of your own individual bubble that can sometimes leave you feeling very overwhelmed. So I'm a complete open book in how we've pivoted our programming and would love to hear how some of your organizations are navigating through this sort of unprecedented time. But that's a little bit about Startup Canada. So I'm happy to talk more about that at our table. A little bit about me. My background is in consulting, so under change management and strategic communications planning, working as a consultant for a number of years for the federal government, associations, a handful of nonprofits, and a bit of private sector as well. Then I moved to Tanzania and was working with entrepreneurs and business leaders in the Tanzanian government in tourism to do capacity building with local business owners, leadership skill development, helping them develop their business plans, and identify from a communications perspective how to market their tourism services. So that's really where my love of entrepreneurship started to bubble up, and really working one-on-one with leaders in the Tanzanian ecosystem was a complete life-changing and wonderful experience. And, it was safaris that we were trying to market. So it was really, really incredible. In my sort of spare time, I'm on the board of the International Association of Business Communicators as their EVP. I've been on that board for a few years, was on the board of the Canadian Public Relations Society, started the Carleton Comms alumni chapter, and do a lot of mentorship work within that space, and with a few other mentorship organizations here in Ottawa and nationally. So love mentorship and really supporting students as they navigate their careers is a passion. I love to scuba dive. I hate to cook. And I'm, just somebody that loves to learn. I'm, diving into this role at Startup Canada during a pretty unprecedented time. So I'm really, interested in networking and getting to know people and their strengths and just building my network in different industries, but also getting a better sense of what roles people are taking on at the moment, what challenges they're having across industries, and how we can bring that into our organization. So I'm really looking forward to all these various conversations and thrilled to get started, Jarrod. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kayla. Actually, you mentioned a very good point about the networking component. That's really near and dear to my heart. And if you haven't already done so, I just encourage all of you at the top right corner to go and connect your LinkedIn profile so that when you're hovering over somebody at the different tables, you can see what their LinkedIn profile is and just click it and it brings you right to their connection. It's a fabulous networking tool. So, Kayla, if I may, what are some of the challenges? Everybody's having challenges these days. But what are some of the steps that Startup Canada is doing to help the ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, right now we're on a listening tour. So we have set up a series of entrepreneur town halls with local MPs connecting entrepreneurs to their government representation. So really identifying those challenges actively because they change every single day. But the biggest challenge I think that we're seeing right now is within the community of solopreneurs or entrepreneurs that might be pre-revenue or high growth, even from last year to this year. A lot of the Government of Canada funding that is coming out is not accessible to a massive cohort of entrepreneurs. So we're seeing some challenges, obviously, in terms of cash flow, that businesses are struggling in, making payroll and paying their expenses today and yesterday and tomorrow. So we are trying to advocate for alternative funding measures that we put in place to support the small businesses and really the solo entrepreneurs that might not have additional staff that would qualify them for the larger subsidies that the government is putting in place. But really having conversations with entrepreneurs, not just talking about what is a challenge for today, but how can they build their businesses for the future as well, that we don't know what it's going to look like. So how can organizations be flexible, but also sort of plan and adjust their businesses so that they can ensure their viability in the long term. So we're doing a number of webinars, sessions specifically with our Women Entrepreneurs program. So we have a specific program there with social impact entrepreneurs, and then also with entrepreneurs across the country, building that capacity and using design thinking strategies, leveraging experts in the community to help businesses sort of pivot right now.
Great. Kayla, we have a couple of questions. This is from Heather. Do you have a sense of the proportion of entrepreneurs across Canada based on their industry? For example, tech versus service versus product-based entrepreneurs?
I do, and I can pull it up. This is a benefit of a digital event, actually. Let me pull up our 2019 census information, Heather. We'll send that over to you, absolutely.
If you put it in the general chat, everybody can see it. That's fabulous.
Will do. Thanks, Heather. Great question.
We also have a question from Albert Wong. From your listening tours, Kayla, what are you hearing are some of the potential key success factors for small business to survive and thrive through the COVID crisis?
Yeah, I think really with what we're seeing is in different supply chains, people pivoting and using their manufacturing centers, and we're seeing some fantastic innovations around face masks and creating using 3D printers to support the healthcare industry. So I think it's identifying urgent challenges and pivoting to respond to them. So we're seeing that specifically in innovative spaces, and there I'd say coming together and really leveraging each other's consultative services as well. That I was having a conversation with Lyndon, who many of you would know from our startup chats, about identifying even some type of credit system that we could bring government into to promote small businesses leveraging other small businesses, that we're not just necessarily looking at consumers to small biz, but how can we have these better B2B interactions? And especially during this time, it's a great moment to take a strategic pause, as I call them, in moments where you don't have 5 minutes, but you can just have a pause to think about the overall strategy of your business. So if you have the luxury of taking some time to reassess your business, that's great, but also identifying an urgent challenge and trying to see if you could pivot your business to solve it. So I think the face mask examples is
that's a great option. When this all started a few weeks ago, I made a few videos on YouTube about how people can continue to grow their business.
Exactly.
I mean, it's gone viral. I got like 500 hits. It's amazing.
Amazing, Jarrod.
I'm being sarcastic, but it's an opportunity as well for those who are optimists. I saw, Heather, I hope your glass is still full, about what can you do to continue building your business behind the scenes, work on the business plan, work on this, that, and the other thing. We have another question from Sue Sutcliffe. Kayla, what sectors need the most help now?
I'd say, the challenge isn't sort of sector specific from what we're gauging. Obviously, small businesses that have brick and mortar spaces that they have no revenue coming from customers, or the traditional spaces there. I think that's an obvious space there if there's no opportunity to go digital. I'd say with pre-revenue, we had a great conversation talking about the Toronto ecosystem this morning with members of Mars or of DMC, of these spaces that are very pre-revenue and that would require massive funding to become viable. Those spaces that really foster innovation and that will be the future, Shopify's of the world. Those spaces are in a critical juncture that if they aren't, provided any cash or have this space to continue, that their viability is in jeopardy, and that those are potential future jobs as well. So I can't really specifically say industry specific, but I'd say those that are solopreneurs, pre-revenue groups, especially in the innovation space, and really, I think also in rural communities as well, that there are already entrepreneurs that lack resources and lack community to lean on, and those are more vulnerable populations that we need to be serving really actively, and demonstrating to governments that we need to not just look at the hubs and entrepreneur spaces in Ottawa, Toronto, or Vancouver, but there are a lot of peripheral spaces that also need support.
Sure. I mean, in my case, I'm a full-time musician. That was the first business I started. Yeah. And I also host events, networking events, and nobody's booking. There are no events. So I'm one of the solo entrepreneurs around town, around the country, probably around the world, who have no income, nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm using this as an opportunity. Like, this is pivoting to go this and rebranding some of my music as Sax Appeal Productions, like live music booking. Anyway, so these are things that people can do. But yeah, you're right. Like every industry is taking a hit these days.
Yeah. And I think it takes a lot of courage as well to say, I'm really struggling that my business has lost all of its revenue. That's an incredibly emotional and frustrating position to be in. And to pivot requires all of this new energy. And, it's very entrepreneurial in many ways, that we all have to sort of reinvent ourselves, but it is exhausting. So I think whatever support that Startup Canada can provide, that other organizations can provide to entrepreneurs that are already dealing with this Herculean challenge, we need to be better support functions to make that navigation a little bit easier.
Sure. And at the end of the day, I mean, you want to pivot into another part of the business that you already know and are respected in. Like if I want to go and start, I don't know, a virtual tennis club, I mean, I would call it Albert because I know he plays tennis, but not me. So you have to do what you still know and what your customer base will not think of, from totally left field. Because we all meet people who, like, every 6 or 8 months start a new business, and it doesn't really build that credibility. At least in my eyes. We had another question from Sue. Perhaps having a matchmaking of innovative pre-funded companies, angels, virtual pitches.
We're actually working with NACO at the moment on this type of idea. So calling on the angel community. What we're hearing is that many of them, the finances that they would have been able to invest in these organizations have also been depleted. So it's figuring out also government incentives. Can we do some type of matching system that incentivizes angels contributing a funding round or two. So we're definitely advocating on that side to think creatively around what additional, more agile funding mechanisms there are in place.
Absolutely. We had another question from Heather. She wants to learn more about your Startup Canada's team.
A rock star team for sure. So Startup Canada is based in Ottawa. So our headquarters are right next to Parliament Hill. And we only have 7 staff that are actually full-time paid within our office. So we have program managers and coordinators, Marcom functions, digital programming, as many of you would have engaged with our startup chats and podcasts. So that program team lives here. But across Canada, we have our Startup Canada communities. Oh, thanks, Sue. Yeah, you can check out our team and their beautiful faces on that URL. But we have our Startup Canada communities across Canada. So they are local, they are entrepreneur-led, small sort of organizations, I guess, would be how you would position them. Some of them have nonprofit status, others are informal groups of entrepreneurs coming together. So they do programming independently of Startup Canada, but we provide support, funding occasionally, sort of overall direction and in partnership with some of our organizational priorities. But they're really the boots on the ground to identify, what do entrepreneurs need, bringing that back to HQ, and also making sure that we are truly a national organization, that we can't just have our Ottawa hat on. We need to make sure that we have those conversations across governments, across provinces, and across different, the accelerators and incubators in Vancouver are completely different than, in Ottawa. So having those conversations and making those relationships really happens through the Startup Canada communities.
Absolutely. Actually, you had me at hat. Actually, a little while ago, I had your predecessor, Victoria, on one of my podcasts, and I'd love to extend the invitation to you one of these days as well, Kayla.
Oh, wonderful. I'd be delighted.